This presentation will be covering the 400 series 1A and 1A1 key telephones and the equipment that makes them work. I will have approximately 10 to 12 of these sets in my display room, and some of them will have lines that's common on a 1A1 and some will be on a 1A, and then I also have a very old 1A1. This is all wired on what's called 44 type blocks. Of the three things in my life that I despise, one of them is cleaning wires off of any kind of a terminal strip, doesn't matter what it is, soldering, even though I'm fairly good at it, and wiring anything that's got screw terminals. In my opinion, it's more painful than having open heart surgery, hip replacement, knee replacement, all at the same time. It's taken me at least 15 years to have any interest in actually wiring this stuff. Even though I am very proficient at wiring, I still have a real dislike for any of the things I mentioned. My intent is to take and wire a 25 pair cable to each of the 44A blocks, and I will show a 44A block momentarily. These 66 blocks have female amphenol's on the left and the right side, so I'll be plugging in cables with a male connector, and then the male connector will be terminated to the 44A block as well as the telephone leads. Ends of the cables that goes to the phone. These are probably 10 to 15 pair of cables depending on the phone, and they're all spade terminals. On the left side, laying on my switchboard key shelf, is a terminal strip mounting backboard, I should say, with four 44A blocks on it. The cable that is cut off, that's ending above the word key on the key telephone system, is what will be on my system, a 25 pair cable. And then over here at the very end, where my finger is, will be the cable that goes to the phone. That's typically how these were installed. Originally, they would have these phones multipled, where you would have a cable coming in and a cable going out between the phones. So anytime there was any changes that needed to be done, depending on the type of a change, you may have to physically make wire changes at each and every single terminal board, block, backboard, whatever you want to call it, in the system, which meant it would really be a bummer to make radical changes. I've only installed a few phone systems in my lifetime that actually had one or two of these cables still in use, and we had to either add a 25 pair cable to it or 2 pair, 3 pair, 4 pair, depending on what kind of a phone system we were putting in. And it was a challenge, to say the least. Almost all of the ones I ever seen was about 10 to 12 inches off of the floor, so you would basically have to lay on the floor to make any changes. I can only imagine the installers of the 30s, 40s, and 50s doing this day in and day out. Of course, the key systems back then would have been very small, and they would not have been as plentiful as like they are today. I have here a copy, and I also have the original, of the 1A key telephone system that shows the various types of telephones and some of the control units. Some of the angle bracket KTUs, and then in the 3 covers, the black and the 2 grays, are a bunch of 1A angle bracket KTUs. Those were used for the non-illuminated key telephone sets. Here is one of the 1A units. This does provide lamps, hold, and ringing to the key phone. There's a 52 unit down below that has the dial intercom. Then there's the 51A, that is the 2-line KTU, and I would love to find a 53A tie line. The terminal can that would have been used, there were two different types, there may have been more, on the 1A, 1A1 systems. These are nut and post binding terminal type. Every wire has to be stripped and put under washers and then tied down. Very time consuming. Close up with a 25 pair cable. This is a brown jacketed cable, and these wires are cloth covered. This is the old color code, not the traditional color code of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and so forth. The other issue with these conductors is they're varnish covered, so you have to scrape the varnish off after you've stripped the wire. This helps make the system a much more miserable install. Internals of a 400 series key phone. This is a 441 EC, and it has an exclusion switch on it. The hook switch is right here, and then this is the exclusion switch. By pulling up the plunger on this particular phone, it opens up 4 leads, which goes down here to terminals marked E1, E2, E3, and E4. That then can be connected to another key phone to exclude that line or to a single line phone. And I have here a phone that is also a non-illuminated phone. It does not have an exclusion switch, but the ringer has a aluminum gong instead of a brass gong, so that way you could differentiate the sound if you had two telephones side by side. And then the last phone here, this does have a lamp circuit in it. I doubt I'll be hooking that up, haven't decided yet, but this is the inside of it, and it's a 444 E as in Edward. I have wired up the two non-illuminated 400 series phones to the two 1A KTUs. Each KTU operates one single line. The quad, which is the gray wire with the green, red, and black and yellow, is temporarily connected for testing purposes. Once this KTU is mounted, I'll cut the wire off and wire it neatly into the unit. This particular telephone right here, which is a 441 EC, had its ringer originally wired in line 2, so I had to move that. Also, this telephone has a hook switch in it with the exclusion key, and the way I wired this, and I would demonstrate it momentarily, is when you pull up the exclusion key, you cut off line number 1 to the second 400 phone, which is 440 EC. This way it gives you privacy. The ringer in this phone is now connected to line 2. When I go off hook on line 1 on either phone, we're going to operate this relay. That's the line relay. When I put it on hold, the other relay operates, which creates a holding bridge and releases the first line. The same thing will happen on line number 2. With this operating this way, you have to remember that the lines were on hold. I've released them. There is no lamp indication letting you know when the line is on hold. If you busy it out, or go off hook, get dial tone, and put the line on hold, unless the central office released the loop, the line would be on hold forever and ever. And of course, when someone calls, that number would be busy. The phones that I have here, again, I was explaining that one of them has an exclusion key. So I'm going to go off hook on the phone that will be excluded, and I have right now dial tone. When I pick up the other phone and remove the exclusion key, I have cut off the first phone. However, I still have the line current flow on the second phone. So I can put the call on hold on the phone that has the exclusion key, and the other phone loses its line and the call has been intercepted. The exclusion is physically wired to one line only. It will not exclude multi-lines. You can exclude multiple phones, but not multiple lines. This is the end of part 1. Part 2, I will continue on with the 1A key telephone sets that does have lights in it to give you a visual indication of what is going on. That should be about 2 weeks.